Hold on, let me ask something. You got let go on April Fool's
Oh,
Day?
it's a great story, man.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I am your host, Shawn D. Nelson, sometimes known as that love sack guy. Okay, think about this. How often do we spend all this time trying to find the right people to join our team? And then once we do that, we just expect that everything is going to be fine. How often do we forget how important the initial onboarding process is? Maybe not even onboarding, just introductory, introducing someone. Yes, you've got them through the door, but it's what you do in those first steps that really matters. Through the door matters. And that's what we're going to talk about on today's podcast. And I've got such a great guest who's an expert on the topic. If you're investing time into this future employee, you're investing in your company. You know, that's the mindset that you have to look at this through. And we're going to talk about hiring. We're going to talk about being hired. We're going to talk about recruiting, how to find a job, how to, both sides of this coin. There's a cost to interviewing and hiring. So why not invest the commensurate amount of time into both sides of that? There are so many exceptional people right now that are out of work. Like, this is a crazy kind of environment that all of us are careening into. We don't even know exactly what's going to come on the other side. You got AI eating jobs. You got federal government destroying jobs in many respects, new jobs being created. So I get to sit down with Adam Posner, host of the POZCast, where we're going to talk about planning your work and working your plan. And all of this idea of through the door matters really stemmed from a personal experience I had very early on at Lovesac, where we were just hustling, we were growing, we were already in 2 or 3 different states. I was not even at our headquarters ever. I was traveling the country, opening stores, going to Mexico, opening a plant. Like, I was never around. And I had a friend who wanted to join and had a great idea of doing some pretty radical things with the business that I was just like, you're in. And I threw him in and sent him off to open a store for us. And before you know it, he was kind of like a main partner at Lovesac. And my other partners, everyone at that time, we were, I don't even know if we were paying ourselves yet. We were all just in it to win it. And even though this guy that I had brought in had tremendous skills and abilities and charisma and like was already creating value, he ended up being rejected. Like no one else wanted him around. They viewed him as like just Shawn's guy. And even though he had all these skills and abilities, it just didn't happen. And in fact, it nearly imploded the company because like we had insurrection. All of a sudden it was like chaos just because I'd gotten this person involved that I thought was just like bringing value. And the point was, I did not take the time to introduce him to the team, to let the team interview him, to let the team weigh in. I think they all might have like rallied around the same person, but because I didn't do a good job of bringing him through the door the right way, it was an utter failure. And what sucked is then I had to fire him essentially. It was emotional. It was a friend. It destroyed the relationship. It lost me credibility with my current partners because they viewed me as like nepotism. I mean, it was just a total and utter failure. And it's all because I didn't bring this person through the door the right way. So that's what we're going to talk about on today's podcast with our special guest, Adam Posner, a recruiting and hiring phenom out there doing it in the real world. I think you're going to gain a lot, whether you're an employer or an employee or a potential employer or employee from this episode. Enjoy it. Bringing new team members through the door the right way can make or break their success and ultimately the success perhaps of your entire organization. There's no one better to break this down with me than today's guest. He's the founder and president of NHP Talent Group, a powerhouse in recruiting and executive search, specializing in digital marketing, media, and advertising. He's also the host of the POZCast, where he's interviewed over 250 top leaders.
It's more than that.
Maybe I'm even one of those. He had me on. But Former guest of the show, on his show. Anyway, Gary Vaynerchuk to the filmmaker Kevin Smith, all on the podcast, uncovering the real stories behind career growth, leadership, and personal development. This guy doesn't just talk about talent. He finds it, he nurtures it, he knows exactly what separates a great hire from a flop. And he understands that the first stage of welcoming someone to the team is not just paperwork and training, it's a make or break moment that defines culture, retention, and long-term success. Please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Adam Posner.
Yes, Shawn, thank you so much for having me. And let's go back to our episode for a moment. My defining mark, I have two kind of like criteria. Is one, if I walk away when we finish a conversation, can I curse? We on a cursing show?
You can say anything you want on this show.
Right. So cue it back in. There's two defining moments for me when I know I have a good episode. When I finish the show and I crumble up my notes and I throw them and I say, fuck yes, because that feels good to me. And I felt that way after our conversation. The second thing, and it really hits home to me because anyone who has been honing their craft, anyone in any profession, you're doing something for a long time, when someone says, hey man, that was real good. You're good at this. You're good at whatever you're doing. You're good at that. When you receive that from somebody genuine, and especially someone like you who's been on tons of shows and has done a ton of podcasts, that means a lot to a podcaster. It means a lot to an artist, an athlete, someone in any profession when someone gives them a genuine compliment. So you take those two things where you feel it inside and somebody else is recognizing it, and that connection means it was a damn good episode. So I thank you for being a great guest.
Oh, well, honored, flattered, and, we do our best. And all right, now it's your turn to return the favor. This will be great. So this topic, this Shawnism, and I love to do this with my guests because it kind of takes us down unique pathways. This is a long held Shawnism of mine. This goes way back to like 2 decades for me. Through the door matters, right? Because I've observed as a CEO that when I didn't take the time to onboard someone properly, to introduce them to the organization properly, and look, some introductions can be like throw them in the deep end. Some introductions can be much more prescriptive. That's not the point. When I'm not intentional about bringing someone through the door the right way for them, for the role, for the organization, it's like it never gets back on track. And so I'm just curious, like without thinking too deeply, when you heard today's topic, what's the first thing that kind of came to mind?
Yeah, and why I chose this one is critical because I've been on both sides of it. I've been hired and then not set up for success, and it's led to failure pretty quickly. And I've also, in the current role that I am in the last decade of being a recruiter and a talent advisor, working with companies to reinforce how critical onboarding is. Because you are setting that person up for success for day one. And if you're not doing it, it's a waste of an entire investment. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of the process, a waste of all the other good candidates that could have been in the same position. So if you're investing the time into the interview process, you're investing the time into the candidate, you're investing the time into that new future employee. And every step of the way is critical, and you need to have a process for it. No matter how big or small your company is, you need to have that process almost defined before you start the hiring process. You can't build this airplane as you're flying it. You have to have that person ready to go from day one, because that trickles back into the interview process. Everything from the offer stage, the first touch point, that's all part of the candidate experience that flows into an employee experience.
Yeah, that's great. And so even just taking the time to do a little bit of preparation, to think it through, I think we can be so haphazard, especially when we need a position plugged, we need a hole filled, we need a role filled, and we're hustling. And in fact, a lot of work might even go into the recruiting, might even go into like the interviewing process. And even if you have like a standard onboarding process at a company, that doesn't necessarily make it the right exact execution or solution for that person, right?
No, I mean, there has to be a little bit of improv and wiggle room for each different role and different levels along the way too. But the other key component is, from a business leader perspective, there is a cost to interviewing and hiring. Think about, Shawn, think about your executive team, their salaries. If you broke that down to an hourly rate, think about how much time they spend interviewing. And to throw that all away for not doing it properly, I mean, there's an ROI on that. That's a loss. That's a sunk cost, right? Like you're gonna lose money on it. So why not invest early on to do it right as a business leader, right? There's financial implications.
Well, not only that, I mean, one thing I reflect on a lot, And it really gives me pause whenever, especially when onboarding any kind of key position or interviewing for any kind of key position. You don't know. You might not know for 2 years if you got it right. And by the time you really know and have figured it out and the writing's on the wall, like this is a bad fit or this person's not going to, pan out, you've lost 2 years maybe. And I mean, so you talk about cost. It's not just the cost of the event and the interviewing and all those things, which is real, but man, the opportunity cost when you get it wrong, it can be cataclysmic. I mean, it could cost you 2 years of who knows what kind of performance or even culture.
At the end of the day, it's a guess, right? It's an educated guess when you make that hire.
Yep.
Right. I mean, some companies I really like, depending on the level, they have different trial periods, but not everyone's able to do that, right? If I'm working a full-time job and you're interviewing me for a senior level role, that can't be a try to buy, temp to hire kind of situation. And the same thing with assignments, right? In this day and age of AI and other kind of cheat tools out there, I mean, you could kind of fake it till you make it. And there's some people, let's call it what it is, and you know this firsthand, some people are really good interviewers. I was a great interviewer, and then some roles I got into, I sucked at it back in the day, right? Because some people are naturally extroverted and they're charismatic and they could charm you, and that causes a like bias in the interview. You're like, you know what? I really liked Adam. He was great in the interview. There's something about him, right? That's why it's important that you have consensus. That means you have multiple team members with different mindsets and point of views interview the same person with the same kind of structured criteria of questions, so you have something to compare to. Hey, how did Adam answer that question on, if he had to do a 60-day blah, blah, blah plan, right? And see how he reacted to that and see how he answered that to you compared to how he answered to Shawn or Susan or Mary or Joe, right?
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, so now it's interesting. You have a long career as an online marketer. And there's nothing more relevant, honestly, to what's going on in the world right now. So you're in this sweet spot of personal knowledge and experience, and you've parlayed that into recruiting people specifically, and probably more broadly, but also specifically for those kinds of roles and whatnot. So you have this expertise. As you reflect on what you're seeing out there happening, either on like the company side or the candidate side, what's the state of play in where are we
It's
at
brutal.
how so? Why is it brutal?
The job market is brutal, man. We're in this crazy state of the economy and politically driven, all these, in this mindset of Doge and efficiency. And a lot of companies are following that lead. They were just waiting for the cue from the top politicians out there to say, what? No, it's okay to cut now. They're doing it. It's okay for us to do it, right? It's okay for us to, toe the line on, hey, we're going to use more technology and AI for a lot of jobs and roles that could be replaced. And there's so many good people, hardworking people that are exceptionally talented that are out of work right now. So we have a supply and demand issue right now. We have a lot of great people that are out of work and very few roles. Now, if you're taking a look at the population that's out of work, there's really good people and there's your B and C list players out there that are having more trouble than ever because they're competing with really good people out there. So if you are just average or mediocre at best, and let's call it what it is, not everyone can be great at their job. You can't. Law of averages, statistics. There's no possible way everyone could be amazing at everything. Those people are going to have a hard time. So for those people, I suggest you look in the mirror really hard and say, is this what I want to do? Am I really good at this? Do I have a competitive advantage? Do I have any, what's my, what's my thing? And if you can't answer that, you need to think about a pivot. And when you think about a pivot, it's hard. I did my pivot. I got fired by Gary Vee after 15 years of working in marketing and recruiting. I said, I'm done with that, working in marketing, and I pivoted into recruiting. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to do professionally.
That's a huge pivot.
Well, two sides of it. Yes, I ate the biggest piece of humble pie. I went from a nice six-figure, marketing director salary to a $40,000 draw as a recruiter, a rookie recruiter. I went to a pure contingency sales role.
Wow.
In 6 months. And it was scary. I was working with like 23-year-olds who was like their first or second job out of school. But once I got in there, man, I saw that I had the competitive advantage. I knew the industry that I was recruiting for. I was recruiting for marketing, media, advertising. So roles that I've worked with or on in the past. I had my Rolodex, if we still call it that, right? Are we still old enough to call it a Rolodex? I love that, right? I had a beeper, a Rolodex. I didn't have a Rolex, but Rolodex. But I still had to learn how to be a recruiter. So I had to eat that humble pie and learn the art and science of recruiting. And if you could embrace a pivot, if you could take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward, and you can't expect to go into another that's the other thing, Shawn. People think that they could pivot roles and make the same salary. Come on, man. That's not the way it works. You got to be realistic out there.
Mm.
So this market's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. And then you're competing with all these AI tools out there, from resume matching to interviewing tools and tricks and everything, that really try to give you a competitive advantage. But guess what? The companies are using all that tech on their side too. So now it's just bot versus bot, man. It's literally bot wars. It's a race to the bottom.
Wow. This sounds dark. This sounds like a gloomy outlook. And in fact, look, I think there's time to redeem it. But before we go there, there's a lot of people out there, Adam, who feel in this landscape that you just described that they just can't even get a foot in the door. Like everything's virtual now. The interviewing process itself is obviously mostly online in many respects, not every respect, but even just like posting of resume, everything, right? What advice do you have for people who just feel like they just can't even get a foot in the door?
Desperate times, people do desperate things, right? And they fall to this idea of spray and pray. It's a volume game, when really you have to be strategic, because what you're doing is you're not managing your own expectations. They think if I send out 1,000 resumes, at least 1 or 2 of them got a hit. But that's really not the case. Instead, if you take the time to focus on a role, a company, a career, an industry that you're really interested in and experienced in, and you go deep, the inch wide, mile deep, and you do your research. And it goes to the advice I'm going to give later on at the end, and I'll say it right here. It's plan your work and work your plan. Be strategic. Plan your work and work your plan. This advice was bestowed to me on the first day of recruiting, before I opened up my laptop, by my mentor, Tom Hull. He said, here's the advice I'm going to give you to be successful in recruiting. And this applies to any job. Plan your work and work your plan. And I do that in a very analog way every single day with these Post-it notes. I have my short-term things. I have my long-term things. I believe in eating the frog every day, of taking on that hardest thing as long as time permits every morning, and get that shit done. I did it. Right? I did it. I did the hardest, most time-consuming thing I needed to do today, and now I can move on to the other tasks. But plan your work and work your plan. That's a mantra that keeps you focused. So if you apply that to your job search, treat every day like it's your job. Be strategic in what you're doing, right? Focus on these companies, focus on networking, focus on connecting, focus on learning. At the same time, focus on upskilling. Learn about AI, learn about the tech in that industry. So when that time comes and you get that phone call, you are the best prepared that you could be. Work smarter. I don't say work smarter, not harder. Work harder and smarter. Do both. It's not either or, it's both.
I love the idea of taking a job search as a candidate as if it's your job, like approaching it like any other, like this is my job right now. My job is to
get a job.
Get a job. And that's something that, only comes along when it comes along. And so I think it can be really taken for granted by people that kind of have to endure the process, but maybe don't take that time up front to admit that out loud. Like, my job right now is to get a job. And so it's not something casual. It's not something you're going to do while you take this little hiatus and maybe an extra trip or two because you have the time and you're in between. Because if you're not careful, you might be caught out a lot longer or miss opportunities if you just expect them to kind of come your way, especially in a market like this, right?
I mean, I have a friend. I'm not going to name him because I love him too, but we've talked about this. And luckily, he was in a decent financial place where he was literally able to take 6, 8, 9 months off and just hang out and go skiing and everything and all that. But we even said how many opportunities he might have missed, how many opportunities he didn't follow up on because he wasn't close to the market. He wasn't following leads. He wasn't following up. And now it's time for him to buckle down. And maybe there's a missed opportunity for what? A couple extra days on the mountain, right? Like was it worth it? I mean, and to each their own, and everyone has a different financial situation, but it goes quick. And all of a sudden you look in your rearview mirror and you're like, shit, I've been out of work for 9 months now. My unemployment has run off. My safety, my runway is a lot shorter than it was 9 months ago. And people also don't realize how long it takes to get a job, the actual job process, especially more senior in your career. process isn't a week. Those could be
Yeah.
3-4 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could tell you as a CEO, when we're interviewing for a serious position, it can take a year. I mean, it shouldn't, but I mean, or the better part of a year. And often it can be much, much faster. But the point is, a serious CEO is not looking for a serious position, is not just going to put a placeholder in that position. Like they are going to find the right person, right? Come hell or high water. And that can take months and months and months. And so if you're on the other end of that, I feel really badly sometimes for candidates, but I refuse to just wantonly hire. And so I'm just giving it to you from this side of the table. The higher stakes the position, the longer it can potentially take. And you got to be prepared for that.
And here's the thing of you as a CEO, if you're interviewing top talent for a senior level role, especially if they're a passive candidate, and for anyone out there, passive means someone who's not actively looking. And that's when someone hires an executive search recruiter, where we're going out and old school headhunting, right? With the spears and the blow darts kind of thing over there. And you have to assume that they're interviewing at your competitor.
Yeah.
And if you don't at least have that mindset, you're going to assume you're the only game in town. And what's going to happen, you get to the finish line, or maybe you're taking too long, Shawn. Maybe you're taking a little too long. And I say, hey, just a heads up, I have an offer from your competitor, and it's a great offer, and I'm probably going to take it. Now, they could be bluffing, probably not, but you have to assume that. Now,
I know it's tricky because here I am just trying to get the right person. It's nothing personal. I have multiple candidates to juggle. So look, I'm only speaking this way because I think sometimes people on the other side of the table can't always appreciate what's going on this side of the table. And it's nothing personal. It's look, you're a great candidate, but we have also 1 or 2 or 3 great candidates. We can only take one.
Can only take one.
And so heaven forbid we kind of get it wrong, whatever that means, even if it's just culturally. It's not necessarily the qualifications at all. In fact, it usually isn't. It's often culturally. And what I mean by that is like, it's not just the best person gets the job. As a CEO, I'm creating a team. It's just like an NBA team. Like we've all seen
manager.
NBA teams have all the best players, and they don't even make the playoffs because that's not what makes a winning team. A winning team is the right chemistry. You know, you need a Pippen
right
with Jordan, even if Jordan doesn't admit it.
There's role players in an organization. Not everyone's the all-star. You need the supporting cast.
Yeah, and so it's a tricky thing to be on my side of the table, often hiring. I can't imagine being on. Look, I've had the unlikely blessing of running the same company I kind of started out of high school here in my 40s, but that's a weird situation, and I admit it. Like I'm unqualified to speak to what it's like on the candidate side. In fact, shifting gears to that, you said at the top of this discussion, you've been on both sides. So when you're back on the other side, when you had the experience of onboarding, coming through the door the right way, the wrong way, tell us about that.
Yeah.
Tell me what that felt like.
I want to go back and relate it to this. I think there's a lot of responsibility on the candidates to do their due diligence in the interview process. You have to know what you're getting yourself into, because a lot of times in your head, you could yes yourself that this is a great role, and you could have your blinders on and you're not seeing the yellow flags, the pink flags, and the red flags because you're so myopic on just getting the job. And maybe it's because you've been out of work a long time, or maybe you think this is a great organization, but you're missing those flags. So I think it's really important as a candidate to slow down and to ask the right questions, and not in these exact words, but you need to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, as a leader, you have to be very candid and not smoke and mirror as a candidate and give them the wrong information. You have to manage expectations on both sides. Shawn, when I'm interviewing in your company, am I being thrown into the fire right away? What's that fire look like? Or am I getting, a 30, 60-day kind of on-ramp to come into the organization, learn, get myself acclimated? And you're like, you know what? I'll be straight up with you. That's not the kind of shop we run here. We have a lot going on. We're a fast-moving organization. We need someone who could jump right in. Yes, we're going to give you a little bit of breathing room to get involved, but you're jumping right in. And I'm telling you very upfront, I'm being very candid with you. And ultimately it comes down to, and I think this is a core piece of leadership, is someone who can manage expectations. I'm going to tell you exactly what to expect. That way, that's the onboarding.
Yeah, I think that is a masterful skill that any leader has to be conscious of is managing expectations. It's often not about whether you're throwing someone into the deep end or whether they get this cushy onboarding or whether even necessarily some of the benefits or some of the details of an offer or anything in life. It's more about the expectation. Like, it's amazing to me how afraid we can be of communicating certain things because like we think someone doesn't want to hear it. And it's that exact fear that leads to some mismatch in expectations. And I'm not just talking about hiring. I'm talking about anything. You know, as a public company, it's almost only about expectations. It's wild for me to observe companies with really crappy results from a straight up standpoint, but because they set the bar low and they beat those results, the stock market rewards them. It's like, how can that be?
That's the world
like,
we live
this
in.
company's losing money. They lost a little less money.
A little.
But if they lost a little less money than the market expected, and so it's the same way in real life. Like, we often are afraid of bad news, but it's amazing how powerful it can be if you set the expectation correctly.
How about this one? You've had Gary Vee on your show before too,
Yeah.
and April 1st, which is right around the corner. Not sure when the show is going to come out. That's going to be 10 years to the date, April Fool's Day. Go figure. That I got let go from Vayner, and I deserve to get let go. Let's just be very clear about that.
Hold on, let me ask something. You got let go on April Fool's Day?
Oh, it's a great story, man.
Was there any piece of you that was wondering?
No, well, here's an important thing too. Yes, it's funny. It's a funny joke, and I still. You kind of look at it also from like a pay standpoint. They probably had it timed out, but right, like, but it's not funny. It's not funny.
Yeah.
And anybody who gets let go, if you truly don't realize that you're getting let go for a reason, there's something wrong on both sides, right? Like, there wasn't properly communicated. There wasn't performance reviews, right? Unless you did something egregious or criminal, right?
People know.
You feel it. You know that, like, hey, this isn't working out, and you're just kind of buying your time, right? Like, you're kind of getting through there. But here's what Gary said to me afterwards, looking back 10 years later, and I'm paraphrasing here. It was hard for him to learn as a leader 10 years ago how to give hard news or how to give radical candor feedback. And he takes a lot of responsibility for not just, my failure there and how it went through, but like how he communicates as a leader for performance and how to communicate with someone maybe a little bit earlier on. And that takes time to grow as a leader and give grace, right? Like, to understand how to give bad news, how to give radical candor, like feedback. It's hard. It's hard to look somebody in the eye and say, Shawn, you are not doing well in X, Y, and Z, and this is not working out, because you're affecting somebody's livelihood. And I went all in on Vayner, man. Dude, I was drinking the Kool-Aid 10 years ago. I thought it was my forever job. I thought the grass was greener on the other side, and it wasn't. And I take the majority of the responsibility for that. In the same breath, looking back on it 10 years, it was a different organization. It was much younger. And I think from an onboarding perspective, things were a little bit different from an organizational standpoint. And every organization grows and matures and learns along the way. What could we do better? How can we set people up for success? And I always tell leaders, hiring managers, leaders, ultimately your goal is to set that new employee up for success the best way possible. Give them the tools, give them the information, give them the time, give them the training, and give them all the information they need also so they can make an informed decision whether they say yes and accept the offer.
Yeah. I think so much of it comes back to just the first principles of communicating, even over communicating, and honesty. And I think like those principles hold true whether we're talking to ourselves, like we're often not fully honest with ourselves. We kind of kid ourselves about our own performance, kind of kid ourselves about our own abilities. There are insanely, this is something I've learned. Look, I get a lot of attention and, like, I don't know, credit because I'm a CEO of a company, a public company for heck's sake, that's had a lot of success in a lot of ways. Listen, we've had our tough days as well. Everyone knows. But the older I get and the more talented people that I continue to hire, the more I realize, holy cow, I'm like the dimmest bulb in the, in the light, in the light socket. Like, there are so many crazy, intelligent, capable people that aren't CEOs, that aren't even necessarily, senior vice presidents, that are really good at what they do, that I don't even hold a candle to. And I get the unique position of hiring them and amassing a team of talent around me that makes me feel dumb. But here's the thing. Why then can I even be in this seat? Because I'm honest about it. Because I'm honest with myself about it. Because I'm even honest, for the most part, with them about it.
Yeah, but but aren't you the smart one for recognizing that? And then that comes down to self-awareness, right? A great leader has great self-awareness and that's, I think there's a lot of important ego to have as a leader. I think there's good ego and bad ego. I'm curious on your point of view on this. I think good ego is palatable. I think good ego is natural. And I think it's a good lubricant for leadership. Because if you have that ego and your self-awareness, I know my weaknesses and I'm going to surround myself with people who are better than me in those areas to accelerate the team. Rising tides lift all ships. And aren't you, instead of you dimming your own light bulb, aren't you the smart one for surrounding yourself with those good people?
It's like my grandpa once said. He said, my grandpa told me, never doubt your wife's taste level. I mean, she chose you, right? So perhaps, I say
that all the time. I say some version of that all the time. Well, my wife always says too, like she saw like the potential to craft me into this Adonis that you see today. If you looked at my picture 17 years ago, a little bit different, but we're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
Right. But getting back to hiring too, again, it's a crapshoot, man. Going back to Vegas, we're talking about, you don't know until that person's in the chair. So give them every tool that they need. Make sure that due diligence is done on both ends, and let's roll the dice.
So let's talk about now, we've talked a lot about hiring and recruiting and the state of play. This idea of through the door matters. So an example, it's like I'm sitting here rewinding 26 years of history at Lovesac, thinking about from the earliest days, my friends. Like all I had in the beginning was friends. And if you read my book, I flat out say, don't hire your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm being a hypocrite because in the beginning, I wouldn't have existed without just the support of my friends and family, both as call it employees, partners, but also as investors, whatever. It's all I had. So those moments exist, but as soon as Lovesac had any footing, I'm a big believer in like merit. I'm a big believer in, there's so much talent out there. What are the odds that one of your buddies is actually the best talent for that slide? Like the odds are slim to none. And so I believe in, and here's my point. When we hire people, whether they are a friend, a warm acquaintance, whatever it may be, just the way we bring them through the door, introduce them to the group, onboard them is so critical. And when I failed to do that, when I've been sort of too busy to really think about how to introduce this person to the team, it may even be pre-gaming it, with your board of directors, with certain people around you, taking the time to really be thoughtful about not just hiring someone, but how do I bring them through the door? Who might I have interview this person just so that they feel like they had a hand in interviewing? Even if I don't need their input, it's just a question of, there's so many little nuances that go into team dynamics that when I failed to bring someone through the door the right way, even if that person is a rock star, I've seen them fail. You ever see that?
You mentioned there was a piece that I picked up on in your monologue there, which is so critical and so insightful because you're speaking the truth after 25 plus years of doing this. You're speaking from the truth. And it's a piece of that one board member, that one employee where I didn't even need to interview that person, but it was critical because you felt that it was the right touch point to have that early interaction on. And my question is, why? Why did you feel it was important for that particular employee to speak to that particular candidate, to at least have that touch point?
It's a good question. Right. I think one of the things
there's a trigger there.
one of the things I harp on a lot is entrepreneurs and leaders. Let's say it differently. Leaders are instinctual beings. The best ones have instincts. And honestly, like a crass way to say it, that's why you're paid the big bucks. It's like, there's lots of people who can occupy a role, I don't know, do the right tasks, complete a job, but to make the big bucks, you have to have instincts and follow them. And so half of it is just instinctual. But being willing to, now it's a pain in the butt. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I really need to, you'll have these flash moments. I really think this person would potentially, be a threat to so-and-so in the organization, right? To carry over here. So I think it's important that I get Carrie to be enrolled in this person's future.
Mm-hmm.
And just by letting Carrie interview this person, even though it might not even be a direct report or anything like that, but I have this instinct, in other words, as a leader. And when we fail to listen to those instincts as leaders, it leads us to failure.
I love that. And you're hiring people for their instinct, their experience, and their gut, which leads me to talk about gut decision. I'm kind of on the fence with gut decision in hiring. Because instinctually, especially for leadership roles, you feel when someone's right. Like you just feel it, right? They're right for the company, they're right for the culture, they're right for the role, because you failed on that so many other times. You made so many other previous mistakes that your gut is dispositioned to know when something doesn't feel right. And that's what you're paying for. On the flip side of that, we have to ensure that we don't have like bias, that we're not hiring everyone in the company looks, acts, sounds, and talks like Shawn. We're not hiring a company of yes men and women and people that all say what Shawn wants to hear. And listen, if that's what you're doing, that's your business as a CEO. But if I'm a betting man,
what do you mean? That sounds glorious.
It sounds glorious. So my minions are reporting up to me. Where have we seen this before? Where is this currently happening? Right. But we I digress. We want people as a leader. And I'm just speaking from my experience, surround me who have diverse point of views that I appreciate, because they are seeing on the other side of my blinders. They're watching out for my blind spots. They're watching out for the company's blind spots. They're thinking about things that I have not thought of. So as a leader in the hiring process, how do you remove like bias? And that comes from the culture you create around hiring, and starts at the top. Every hiring's culture comes from the CEO, from the leader, from the business owner. How am I going to define how we hire in this organization? And that's really what it comes down to, man. Right? Like, just don't hire all the same. Otherwise, it's going to be a company.
Well, two things on that. I throw this out a lot, but it's important. I never do an interview without having our table stakes values in front of me. So at Lovesac, we have our core values. We know what they are, right? Table stakes are like, just to be here at the table, these things better be true. And they can be very basic. Like in our case, it's like positivity, transparency, but it makes it easy because I could be looking at the best resume, man. This person is just on it. They've got it. They've got all the experience, but they're kind of just a downer, but they're awesome. I just answered the question because we defined, and you get to define that as a leader, but you better stick to it. You identify some table stakes values. Look, this is the culture we're building. It's a culture of, let's say, and it doesn't have to be those things. I'm just telling you what they are at Lovesac. But it makes interviewing that way kind of binary and easy. But I want to also come back to this like bias, because I want to push on that a little bit. So I love this call out, right? How do we escape the like bias, right? We just like this person because
I just like Adam. He's likable, but guess what? He sucks.
He's likable. And by the way, he has a great resume, so we hire him. But you may be really blinding yourself to a better candidate that's better for the organization because of that like bias. On the other hand, I will give you the other side of that coin.
There's an extreme of that, of course.
Yeah, well, and here's the extreme. And a friend taught this to me through an interviewing process for a C-level position here at Lovesac, where this one person just really kicked butt. Just like, this person is going to come in and just be like a butt kicker here. And it's awesome in a good way. Like this organization, by the way, needed some butt kicking at the time, but they were, they had a really, just bad suit, bad tie, kind of like annoying personality, but like at the same time, a butt kicker. And we were thinking about hiring him, but this friend of mine said, look, I call it the foxhole test. If you were stuck with this person, let's say not in a foxhole,
or they call it the airport test, right? If you're stuck for 8 hours at O'Hare, right? Like snow delay, what do you do?
24-hour snow delay in an airport. You can't leave their presence. Are they just going to annoy the crap out of you to the point you want to stab your eyes out? You can't hire that person. So they don't have to be your best friends. That's one thing I'm really proud of. If you look at if you look at my team at Lovesac, every age, shape, height, weight, experience.
You have the diversity. Yeah.
But what do they have in common? Those table stakes values. These are good people. They are from some kind of a mold, but it has nothing to do. By the way, I'm the only one that rides dirt bikes. I'm the only one that's into water sports. And I don't expect my team to be like me remotely. I don't need them as friends. I have friends. I need them as
it's a business,
an amazing team. And thankfully, I think we've got that.
Are you pro or con against when people say it's a family here? The people that work at Lovesac are a family.
Oh, that's such a good one. I just recorded a piece of content where I react to that video. I think it's the founder of Netflix, right? Reed Hastings. He has this great soundbite. He talks about how he hates organizations. So let me tell you about that. So we use this hashtag Lovesac family. And I watched that video and it's hard for me to watch because I agree with Reed. Like everything he's saying about merit and a team, and it really should be more like a team than it should be a family, I agree with. On the other hand, here I have a whole culture wrapped around this hashtag Lovesac family, which for us, by the way, it's not just our employees. It's actually embraces like too. Our customers, like everyone involved, but and we use it kind of fluidly like that. And I don't know how to reconcile it except to say this. And it's one of my podcasts recently. Tradition breeds coalition. And we set the tradition of the Lovesac family, and there's value in it just for that. But in terms of but you get to define in terms of business, you don't have to mean it literally. And our Lovesac family, if you're familiar with our culture, in fact, here's one for you. You would never guess this. What do you think, Adam? We live in the world of HR consulting. I used to be, by the way, an HR consultant, if you could believe that.
When did you have time for that? I thought you
in Shanghai, China, at 22 years old. I used to do it in Mandarin Chinese.
By the way, anybody who's listening to this, here's a shameless plug. We get into it on my episode. Should we talk about the elevator situation in China when they don't know that Shawn is completely fluent?
Yeah, anyway, it's a whole other life. But what's my point?
HR consulting. Yeah.
What would you guess Lovesac's number one core value is? If you just had to put a wild guess based on the little bit you know about me and this name called Lovesac, our stock ticker is love.
I think it's empathy, or some version of that. I think it's some kind of caring.
And by the way, our ultimate number 5 core value is love matters. But our number one listed core value at Lovesac is top ambition. And I know that's going to surprise you. And I know that seems kind of like
top
gross.
Ambition.
But listen, man, we are not here to F around. We look like a bunch of pot smoking, you just sit on beanbags all day.
This is a company. We're here to make money.
But listen, Lovesac has always been my alter ego. And as a leader, we are out to build the most loved brand in America. That's our stated mission. Our purpose is far more pretty. Our purpose is to inspire humankind to buy better and buy less. Why am I telling you all this? Just to drive the fact home. I believe, I'm answering your question. I believe in what Reed Hastings has to say. I believe in a team mentality. I believe in a super team that is not built of my friends, but is built of the best people for the job, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, whatever. But I still believe we can somehow rally around the idea of being this Lovesac family. What's hard about it, and this is the two-edged sword, when you have to kick someone out of the family, it's even more painful. And it's taken more personally, and they haven't just lost their job. They've been kind of extricated from a club. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying it's the cold, hard reality and the downside of building a culture around that.
It's a tough one, and I tell people all the time, and we live in this day and age, to attach yourself to an identity of your job it's like the cliche, you're not your job. You're not defined by your job. You're not defined by your resume. But if this is something you do 40, 50 hours a week, and these are the people you spend your
Yeah.
time with, these are the people that you're closest to. And it hurts. It hurts. It's brutal. I felt that way. And I felt that way when my time at Vayner came to an end. And I said to myself, I'm never working for a company again. I'm only going to work.
Yeah.
And yes, I work for agencies, yada, yada, but I'm never going to work for corporate America again.
Wow.
And I said to myself, there's going to be ups and downs. I don't know what the next 10 years of my life are going to look like, but I'm in control. No one could fire me except myself. And yes, clients could let you, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not getting let go by a company. I never want that feeling again.
Yeah.
And I made that my mission. And it's because companies have said, oh, we're family here. I go bullshit. I call bullshit on that. You don't fire your family.
I hate being on the other side of it. I hate that. I love it while it's intact.
You have to let people go.
That aspect of it sucks.
Some people you have to let go. It's a business decision. They're not right. And at the end of the day, let's call it what it is. You're doing them. You're doing them a good service, right? You're saying this is not the right place for you. There's and there, listen, there's some employees that you need to let go for performance. Some employees got to let go because it's just not the right fit for them. I was let go of Vayner because it was not the right time and place for me in my career in that organization. Yeah. And it opened up doors for me. Did I see it at the time on April 1st, 2015 when I got let go? Right? No, I didn't see it that way. I thought it was the end of my life. And for a few months it was. And it was a downward spiral of emotion. And there was some personal stuff going on. My daughter had an accident at the time. And I thought life was over for me. And I had to reinvent myself. But I would never be here on this show with you if that moment didn't happen. And if I didn't have that moment of, I call it my self-awareness epiphany, Shawn, where I had to look deep down inside and say, what am I good at? What do I suck at? Why am I still doing things that I suck at? And why don't I do more of the things that I'm good at? And I went down that path and I did the due diligence and I met with every recruiter that I ever met with. And I joined an incredible staffing agency that taught me how to be a recruiter. Did that for 3 years. And then I went out on my own, but I wouldn't have had that experience if I didn't have the previous 16 years of my life.
Yeah. It's a good message for anybody who's ever felt the way you felt when you lost your job. It's good to be both feet in. You can't get jaded to the point where you can't drink the Kool-Aid. You got to be willing to, I believe, everything in life, be all in. And you made the choice to do life differently after that, but it still didn't ruin you. At the time, it might have wrecked you temporarily, but it didn't ruin you.
And I think, man. Yeah, it did. Darkest moments of my life.
By the way, back to Lovesac, think how hard it is for us as a leadership team to thread the needle between top ambition and love matters. But by the way, as I said, that's why they pay you the big bucks as a leader.
The crown.
It's not what we're trying to do if you do it well. Like if you're not just building a company and make money and get bonuses and like, I don't know, if you're really trying to build something, isn't it likely to be difficult? So when you take on the most difficult challenge of, for instance, maintaining top ambition while trying to be honest with love matters, it's going to be hard. There's not black and white answers to these questions. There's not black and white answers to leadership. There's not black and white answers to employees choosing a job. There isn't, it's not going to be perfect, but we muddle through, we make the best decisions with the information we have. And then we just keep going when it doesn't go our way. And that's the thing. I just wrapped up another podcast under the topic, pros keep playing. And you found a way to keep playing at them even after the music stopped. And here you are.
You keep going. And it's this weird thing where there is no quit. We were talking about before, I have a health journey in front of me right now. I got a business that is directly correlated with the economy, where if economy's not good, recruiting's not good. And you just keep on going, because for me, failure is not an option, right? It's not an option. And that's the fire, and it's ambition, and it's knowing that people count on you. And that's what it's all about. And I'm really trying to embrace my audacity. I'm really trying to embrace this idea of knowing who I am and making that work for me, right? Some days it's going to work. Some days it's not going to work. But as long as you keep moving forward and take it one day at a time. Listen, I don't know who to attribute the original quote to, but we've all survived 100% of our bad days. And we've all gotten through that one way or another. The same thing goes back out to job seekers, to bring it home here. There's great days in the job search, right? Here's some advice for job seekers. There's great days in the job search. You're getting replies to emails, right? Interviews are getting set up. But for every one of those good days, there's going to be at least 10 bad days. That's about the ratio if I'm going to make it up. One good day to every 10 days. So you have to manage your emotions. You have to manage those highs and manage the lows, and stay as even keel as possible, and just manage expectations. It goes back to where we started in this conversation on both sides. It's managing your own internal expectations. Things take long. Other people are interviewing. People are on vacation. They're slow to reply to you. They never reply to you, right? Like, these are all just things that are out of your control. But what you can control is yourself. You can control how you react and how you respond.
I love that. I once saw this clip from Tony Robbins where he was asked, do you ever have any bad days? And he responded something to the extent of, not anymore. And I just don't let them happen, and he does his cold plunge, or he does his
firewalk,
power posing, or I don't know, whatever he's got to do. And I respect that, man. Like, wow. Like, but I'm going to just build on what you said. I've come, as I've gotten more experience, to recognize when I'm having a sucky day or even a sucky week. And I'm not saying I roll around in it. I might try a cold plunge or a workout or whatever it takes to get out of that funk. But at the same time, I accept it. Like, if we can just give ourselves a little more grace and accept that there's some bad days, and this too shall pass. And as long as I'm not just, again, becoming a victim of it, as long as I'm fighting against it, it will be better tomorrow, or maybe even 2 or 3 days in a row, but whatever it takes. And that's been my experience, and that's what we got to do. And so what a fantastic conversation. Look, I know you got to jump. So look, everybody follow Adam J. Posner on Twitter at Adam J. Posner, and on Instagram, AJ.
Follow me at NHP Talent. Sorry, let's fix that one. We're going to follow me at NHP Talent. Follow me on the corporate page.
All right, follow him on the corporate page. There's a true company man. NHP Talent. He's an amazing podcaster, an amazing business leader. His podcast is really where it's at. The POZCast, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much to the podcast powerhouse, the tactician of talent, the picker of the right people himself, Mr. Adam Posner.
Listen, Shawn, I appreciate you. That was great. I'm going to take that sound clip and I'm going to use it at the end of my show. I'm going to use that instead of my shameless plug at the end of my show. This has been fantastic. Guys, anyone out there who even thinks about getting into podcasting, it's taken 6 years, but this is the result of it. I have a relationship with Shawn now. He's been on my show. I've been on his show. Who knows where that's going to lead to? It's going to open up doors for me, maybe something for him, right? The value pendulum changes sides, but you wouldn't have it unless you try something. So if you have an itch, if you're in between jobs right now, you're like, I'm going to try a podcast. Give it a shot. Right? Like, try something. It opens up relationships. It's a Trojan horse. It's my not so secret.
I appreciate
not
that.
so secret, man. Not so secret.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling that out. And look, it feels daunting to look at, my podcast isn't as heavily trafficked as yours, but it's on its way. And I don't know, this is just me living to my Shawnisms. Like, my number one Shawnism, the thing that kicked off the book, thing that kicked off the podcast. I'll just build on your plug, Adam. Just do something. And in my case, I recorded an episode and we haven't quit since. And it's me trying to, live to what I preach. So thanks for the call out and thanks for coming on. And remember, if you're listening, it's not just about picking the right people, but how you bring them through the door matters. And really grateful to Adam for breaking this down for us. This just might save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey. And that's all we're hoping for. So thank you.
Thank you.
Once a year to take my friends away. It should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.